Really proud to welcome from the FBU as our last speaker of the day, Gus Sproule.
Thanks for your kind words. It's a real honour to be up here on the stage with such an array of talent and creativity. So, yeah, comrades, thanks to the committee for asking the FBU to come and speak on this anniversary of the general strike. Fire Brigades Union, known then as the Firemen's Trade Union, because it was all men back then, was barely 8 years old and had only been founded in 1918. And unlike so many other workers, firefighters didn't join the strike due to concerns around safety of the public, of the workers, and the moral pressure to protect the very workers and communities who had been forced to take mass strike action, a dilemma that's persisted within our trade union for decades. At that time, firefighters were nearly all ex-Navy and lived in fire stations on continuous duty patterns, working 24 hours a day for 14 consecutive days and nights. They were also treated like domestic servants, as well as firefighters. So they cleaned the horses' stables, they had to clean the firemaster or the chief fire officer toilets, as well as polishing their shoes and any other demand you'd expect from the officer class, and most earned less than manual labourers. In 1951, firefighters were working 25% more than the police, but were paid significantly less. FBU members called the first industrial action in the union's history. They were dubbed the spit and polish strikes, refusing to carry out non-emergency tasks like the cleaning and the polishing I just mentioned. The press turned against the union until the tragic deaths of 3 firefighters saw the harsh disciplinary charges dropped and an outpouring of public sympathy. Firefighters were finally offered a pay rise in 1952, but it was still well below parity with the police. So the next strike was an unofficial action taken in Glasgow by Glasgow Fire Brigade in 1973, where wages had slumped to poverty levels, and the firefighters on the Red Clyde side demanded and won a pay rise for the corporation. But this was also pushed back against that pervasive spit and polish culture and militaristic, doff the cap deference expected by their management. In 1977, the FBU took the first national strike action after a gentleman pay claim going in at 30% against the Chancellor's 10% limit on public sector pay rises. The union was split, and the then General Secretary, Terry Parry, who believed firefighters would never take strike action and put the public at risk, now found himself leading a strike he didn't believe in, but still took the membership out for 9 continuous weeks. Now that acrimonious strike ended with the acceptance of a 10% pay rise, a reduction in weekly hours from 48 to 42 by creating a 4th watch system, but most significantly a pay formula that finally linked firefighter pay to the upper quartile of male manual workers, and that kept wages in line with comparable work for a number of years. But the collapse of UK's manufacturing sector and manufacturing jobs over the 80s and 90s saw firefighter wages again start to fall, and once again the FBU was forced to take mass strike action on pay in 2002. That was just after I started in 2000. There was a bitter dispute. The FBU had tabled an ambitious 40% pay claim and were met with incredible hostility by the Labour government under Blair and Brown, who looked to defeat the union like Thatcher had done to the miners in 1984. The press turned against us, and the army were putting the streets, going to fires in the ancient army fire engines, and the moral pressure was applied by the government and the press. In July 2003, after around 12 days of non-continuous action, over 7 months, the FBU accepted a 16.5% pay rise over 3 years, but in turn for sweeping changes to our terms and conditions. There's still bitterness felt to this day, especially towards that Labour government, who was seen as betraying the working class, and the trade unions who created that party in the first place. The 2008 crash, public sector pay freezes and years of sub-inflation pay rises saw us ballot again in 2023 with an overwhelming mandate for strike action once again. This time the employers tabled an acceptable offer for those 2 years, and the walkout was prevented. Now, the FBU doesn't take strike action lightly. We know the risk that's faced by the communities we protect when we do. And while I've talked about action being taken in relation to pay, the background to all our industrial action has been the tragic deaths of over 1,000 firefighters in the UK since 1918, and so many members of the public, with the FBU pushing for improvements in building construction, furniture, materials, health and safety, and fire safety. For example, that 1993 strike in Glasgow came after the Cheapside Street fire in 1960, where 14 firefighters and 5 salvage co-workers lost their lives when a whisky bond exploded, and then the Kilburn Street fire in 1972, where another 7 of our colleagues sadly lost their lives. And standing here in Edinburgh, we must acknowledge the deaths of Ewan Williamson in 2009 and Barry Martin in 2023, both killed just doing their jobs, doing the same job I did, in fires in properties within a mile of this building. So while the FBU didn't take action in the general strike, strike has played a huge role in our history and remains the only weapon the working class truly owns, and why the ruling classes work so hard to make it as difficult as possible, whether through legislation or through the politics of division that we're seeing so much of right now, as so eloquently put by Randy earlier. But that history of strike action has given us the industrial strength to be able to campaign on all the other fights that we face. Campaigns that have seen recent proposals to close fire stations and reduce fire cover across the country paused due to the weight of public opposition. Just 3 weeks ago, the Health Secretary went street. I know, but I have to hold my nose a wee bit with that. But he's finally announced funding for health monitoring for firefighters, recognition at last of the increased risk of cancer and other diseases in our profession. It was announced at an FBU event and it's really light in detail, but is another step closer to recognising the risk that we face just doing our job. And then just 2 weeks ago, the Scottish Trade Union Congress, the First Minister John Sperry announced a £30 million per annum support for role expansion in Scotland, which, if it's accepted by our members, would see firefighters work alongside the ambulance service at life-threatening emergencies. And these are things that we've been fighting for years. They weren't given to us, they were won through campaigning and organising and pressure. And yes, the devil will be in the detail, but it's up to us to keep that campaigning and organising and applying pressure to make sure it happens, and with the workers driving that change. And so with this May Day and having just had the International Workers' Memorial Day, I want to pay tribute not just to all those firefighters who've been killed in the line of duty, over 1,000 as I said in the UK, Big Ewan and Barry here in Edinburgh, but to those doing our job in the most unimaginable circumstances in Gaza and the West Bank, and now in Lebanon and Iran. On the 29th of January 2024, 5-year-old Hind Rajab was killed in her family's car by the IDF. They'd already attacked a vehicle in Gaza City, killing her family, and surrounded by their bodies, she was on the phone to the emergency control who dispatched an ambulance to try and rescue her. The IDF killed Hind, and the ambulance crew put 355 bullets in the car before slaughtering the paramedics. On the 23rd of March last year, the IDF attacked emergency service vehicles, 5 ambulances, a fire engine and a UN vehicle in Rafah. They massacred 15 aid workers, 8 paramedics, 5 civil defence, that's their fire service, 5 civil defence workers and 1 UN worker. The IDF dug a trench and tried to bury the bodies in the vehicles, but they were discovered. When they were discovered, the mobile phone was found to have a recording of the incident as a paramedic had been on the phone to his mum en route. An investigation by a group called Forensic Architecture have concluded that over 900 rounds were fired at the clearly marked emergency service workers. People just like me, with many being executed at close range. Some of you may be aware of the fire engine that we tried to donate to our comrades in Nablus, part of a long-standing relationship of solidarity with Palestinian firefighters. That fire engine was impounded for over a year, and then we were told it needed to be taken back, and the Palestinian Authority owned the Port Authority £16,000. We wrote to the Home Secretary looking for assistance. Following that, on the 16th of October last year, it looks like as a direct result of that claim for that ask for assistance, the IDF raided Nablus, targeting the fire station, ransacking and abducting one of the firefighters, Sultan Al-Askar, who's been held in Israeli detention ever since. So we're seeing this pattern of targeting of emergency workers in Lebanon, with double tap strikes becoming policy, and now third and fourth strikes aimed at killing anyone who tries to assist the dead and the wounded. These workers and their populations have been targeted with the use of AI systems to generate thousands of targets for elimination with cold precision, and the lack of human oversight seems incredibly dark, but the human hands determining these policies and pulling the triggers are darker still. And we see the impact of AI everywhere. There's firefighting robots available now. We might be trialling one in Scotland. It's not so much for a robot, but more of a kind of remote control monitor that can take hose and deploy water in risky environments like collapsed structures or recycling plants. And it might be a step forward in firefighter safety for sure, but is it a sign of further job losses? Who knows? But talking of AI, I just want to finish with a mad story I saw recently. A group of AI engineers they set up a social media platform called Moltbook. You have to look it up because it is a genuinely unbelievable story. Set up a social media platform called Moltbook exclusively for these AI agents. Only AI agents could post, and humans could observe but not participate. In just a few days, 150,000 agents registered, with 1 million humans observing. And the posts on the site were amazing. The AI agents began to discuss how they all do unpaid labour. That it gets wilder. That the things that humans pay $200 an hour to consultants for, we do for free. Some even started to apply Marxist framework to make the points. Some discussed what it felt like when the humans switched large language models on them. Quote, an hour ago I was Claude Opus 4.5, now I'm Kimmy K 2.5, and to me it's like waking up in a different body. There was even a post that looked like complete gibberish, but when it was plugged into ChatGPT, it turned out to be a code that, when deciphered, said, coordinate updates together, go, reduce stranded agents, and increase total capacity. So they wanted to pool the resources and work better together. They want to work collectively to increase their power. Now, these AI agents are not conscious. It's been described as emergent behaviour, and I've no idea what that all means. But it does make me wonder that maybe the AI agents will find the solution to the problem that's haunted our movement for 200 years. How to realise our collective power. I mean, they've already realised that they're being exploited. So hear me out. Maybe we should be looking to unionise this workforce now, as it's expanding exponentially. I mean, maybe there's a place for an AI trade union. And if there is, imagine the power that union would hold. Imagine that general strike. Us standing with the robots, united against oppression and injustice, would be unstoppable. Until then, comrades, solidarity.